Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Neal Levene. Neal, CPP APMP, is the Director of Proposal Management, Siemens Government Technologies. He has 30 years of sustained, progressive, and successful proposal development experience. He was previously the President and CEO of two small businesses, a 20-person data warehouse company, and a sole practitioner proposal management consultancy. He is serving his third year on the board of the National Capital Area chapter of APMP, currently as the Technology Chair. Neal has been an active member of APMP since 2010, and he recently presented at the 2017, 2018, and 2019 Bid and Proposal Conference. In addition to APMP's professional level certification, Neal also holds a project management professional certification from the Project Management Institute. Neal lives in Ashburn, Virginia with his wife, Diane. He and his two grown daughters, one pursuing a history Ph.D. at the University of Wisconsin, and another is a junior at Carnegie Mellon studying engineering. Wow. Welcome, Neal, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So, Neal, I'm sure you know, we love to start in the beginnings. We're curious, where were you born? Where did you grow up and where did you go to school?
Well, I was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where I lived until I was 2, so I have very few memories of where I was born. So I really grew up in Columbia, Maryland, and Ellicott City. And Columbia, Maryland was kind of a interesting place to grow up because it was a planned community, and it's a sister city to Reston, Virginia, where I lived pretty close to, and it was strange growing up. Columbia was supposed to be a much bigger city because it was located right between Baltimore and Washington, and people thought that Columbia would be bigger because people would either commute to Baltimore and or Washington, and little did they know how this area would grow, and Reston is orders of magnitude bigger than Columbia at the moment. So that's where I grew up. Columbia was an interesting place to grow up. And then you asked where I went to school, I think you
Yeah.
So I went to high school at Centennial High School in Ellicott City. It was a really good school. Then I got my Bachelor of Science in Information and Decision Systems from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and also got my Master's of Science in Public Management and Policy, with a concentration in management from Carnegie Mellon. I got both degrees in 4.5 years, so I didn't really waste much time. And it was due to both some hard work, but also because I was taken under the wing of one of the rising deans, Mark Camlett, who I owe quite a bit to. And I keep in touch with him and, write him every once or twice every 2 years or so. But it's strange that my daughter's now at Carnegie Mellon. It was kind of a strange accident, but so that's where I went to school.
Oh, wow. It must be nice to have, your daughter at your alma mater.
Yeah, she's doing engineering, which is a bit different than what I did, but there are a lot of things that are common in the experience I had and that she's having now. So it is kind of nice.
It's really sweet. And you studied, some very interesting subjects. Were your first jobs outside of university kind of in that field, or what was your...
They were very... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. You're good.
They were... it was an IT-oriented degree, and so I started out in the IT field at a company called American Management Systems. That was my first job out of college. And as a analyst and moving into a project management kind of position, and strangely enough, that's also when I got into proposal management, because while I was on that project, they were looking for people to help out on resumes. And I was at the point in my career where if they had asked me to pick rocks out of tires in a car, I would have volunteered to do that. They just happened to be asking for, resume help. So I said, yeah, I'm interested in doing, any kind of experience. So I worked on this a proposal. For those of you who are in the federal marketplace, it happened to be TIPS 1 for the IRS. I think TIPS is now up to 5 or maybe 6. I've lost track. But it was back in 1990, and I was on my first proposal, and it was so exciting to be on this proposal team, and it just was an amazing experience, and I got a bonus. That was exciting. I said, "This is great! You get extra money for doing this," and so I was hooked. And from then on, there was never a point in time in my career where I wasn't on some kind of proposal. It was weird. So I did start in the IT and kind of moved up a technical progression.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Over the years then, you kind of got your feet wet then, and did you eventually kind of just move into a more strict proposal role?
What happened is that I started, as kind of an analyst, and then became a project manager, and then a program manager, and then a department manager, and then I ultimately ended up in a situation where there was a conflict of interest with a very large program in my department, and I spun off that large program into the first business where I was the president of that. And during all of these times, one of the major things that I needed to do was win recompete business. And I was very good at doing proposals, and so I was often dragged into corporate proposals kind of as just side business. So I had to win my own proposals, was always doing these corporate proposals. And then when I spun off my own company, the main thing that I focused on was doing proposals to kind of expand that business. And then when that business kind of ran its course, it was about 8 years, I was in this unique situation where I could pretty much do what I wanted. And so I said, well, for about 3 months or so, I'll do some proposal consulting, because that's kind of what I like doing the most. And that turned into 5 years doing proposal consulting for 30 or 40 different organizations around.
Oh, wow.
All around the country. That was just a great experience. So I did that for about 5 years. And then I really realized that I wanted some continuity with the organizations I was working with, and then started being a director of proposals at 2 organizations that led me to where I am right now at Siemens, a place that I'm truly enjoying working with, or at, or whatever the right preposition is.
Wow, what an interesting evolution. Very cool. I can imagine, working for yourself for 5 years was really nice, but also definitely understand kind of that, wanting that continuity and consistency. Definitely sounds like a great company you're part of as well.
Yeah, it was fun. At every place that I was, there was something that led to picking up an important skill that's useful right now. I love the 13 years of running my own business. It had definitely been a life goal, and I enjoyed. I really enjoyed it. When I was kind of a sole practitioner, it was very exciting to work with the companies that I did. The work that I was doing a lot of times was with senior executives at the companies I was working with, and they would bring me in typically for these engagements where it was the most important proposal that had come along, and because of the size of the organization I was working with, typically these were programs that, we've lost our last 3, and if we don't win this one, we're going to be closing our doors. And by the way, our management team doesn't get along with each other, and we need our processes renewed, and can you do all of this? And we only have a couple months to do this. And so it was fun and stressful and a great expertise. But after about 5 years, I was kind of like, okay, I want to win the job and then see it go to the next step and, build on, these successes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess currently in your role at Siemens, you get to see that a lot more.
Yeah, you get to win, and sometimes you never see that area again, but sometimes you get to bid on the recompete. And what motivates me, has always motivated me, both as a project manager or business owner or being in this field, is I think it's a really noble profession in that it creates jobs for people. And you win a $1 million job, a $10 million job, a $100 million job. You can do a division and figure out how many people you've created jobs for. And then you multiply that by the family of 4, and you can think about how many lives you've impacted. And that's always hit me and motivated me. And at the times where you say, oh, this is really hard and this takes a lot of my life, I've always thought of the people sitting down at dinner with their family and said, this is important work. And that's what I've always loved about this field.
Yeah, we really do get to impact so many people, and such a great perspective and a great reminder to everybody, why we actually do this, right? We all like winning, but like the impact we can make on our organizations and on the employees who work for them, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's very far-reaching.
Absolutely. So over the years, I know you've worked on some very interesting proposal efforts. Are there any that stand out to you?
Well, I definitely remember that first proposal that I worked on because, I'd never really been on a proposal. It was during a huge snowstorm, and I remember, I remember the person who was in charge of it, who was Paul Cohen, who became a huge mentor in my life, saying, everyone bring your computers home so that you can work in the snowstorm. And there were no laptops then. So you were bringing home a desktop, and I remember carting all my stuff out so I could work at home in the snow. And so I remember that one just because it was, that first experience and how exciting it was. But what sticks with me more than the individual opportunities, which kind of blend together a little bit at this point, is I remember the people and how much the teams come together and how hard people are willing to work on these important goals, and how powerful it is to get several minds together and how creative people become. And I'm always amazed by the creativity of people, and that sticks with me more than the individual proposals, the people.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The proposal teams can sometimes make or break the feeling of a proposal effort, right?
They definitely do.
So before we kind of dig more into your career and APMP a little bit deeper, can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
Oh, that's that's interesting. So I think one of the interesting things that many people don't know about me was my grandfather was a lawyer ostensibly, but his passion was running Naog Amusement Park in Scranton, Pennsylvania with his brother. And so I grew up with a amusement park in the family. So I spent my summers and vacations going up to Scranton, Pennsylvania, where the office is set
Right.
now, so people know of that city. But for me, that was just a wonderful place to go. And so I used to go up there and ride the rides or work the rides, or he'd give me rolls of quarters and I'd play the pinball machines all day. So that was incredible. Not many people. It's like, having a ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and that was incredible. So that's one thing many people don't know about me. Another thing is I once literally knocked Anne Rice, the horror fiction author, to the ground and almost got killed by her bodyguards. I was late to a signing and I wanted to get a book signed by her. And she was coming out. She was fully dressed in this like Gothic wedding dress. And I wasn't really looking where I was going. I guess I'm kind of clumsy. And I was running into this Barnes & Noble, and I ran smack into her. And she fell to the ground, and I pretty much bounced off her like in a cartoon. And the bodyguards thought that I had attacked her or something like that, and were about to kill me. And she was like, no, it was just an accident. And she signed my book. And so I had a very up and close interaction with Anne Rice.
Wow.
Almost died because of it. So that's something people don't know about me.
Yeah.
I guess another thing people don't know about me is I'm an introvert, but I do a tremendous amount of talking in work settings, and I love to speak in front of large audiences, and I did broadcasting in college and stuff like that. But in my natural habitat, I'm very quiet, and when I get home from work, I barely talk nowadays you're always home at work.
Right.
I have no words left because I've used up all my words, where I've had to. And so I definitely get my energy from, kind of my internal world versus my external. So a lot of times when people hear that I'm an introvert, they're surprised because, in the settings that they know me, I sometimes never shut up. That's something that people don't know about me.
Oh my goodness. I feel like that's kind of a common thread among many proposal professionals. They're like secretly introverts, and people don't necessarily know unless they know them on a personal level.
Yeah. You'll find me in the corner of any kind of happy hour. That was one of the reasons why I got very involved, and it's a good suggestion for introverts is to get involved in the association with a role. I always try to be the person handing out like the drink tickets or something, because it gives you a role in the event, and you can. Here's the ticket. Here's a ticket. Have a ticket. Would you like a ticket? Something to say, because I would rather give a presentation in front of 1,000 people than try and make small talk in a happy hour. That's something that's just really, really hard for me to do. Just a tip, a free tip, unsolicited tip.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's good advice, particularly for those who they want to be involved, they want to start networking, but having those conversations and starting those conversations is just, so daunting. If you have that kind of role, you can still meet and talk to people and get known and just have a reason instead of
it makes it easier.
Absolutely. So speaking of APMP and the organization, I think we said you joined APMP in 2010. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
How did you find out about APMP?
So it's interesting, and Mike Parkinson, who most people know, just an amazing speaker and wonderful graphics, all-around kind of nice guy, is probably the reason that I got involved in APMP. And when I had started my consulting practice, the business that I ran before was a data warehousing company, and a lot of it dealt with visualization of data, of large sets of data, a lot of financial data. And during that time, when I was writing my proposals, I was working on a methodology for proposals to make them more visually oriented, because the work we were doing was very visually oriented. And I'd come across some of Mike Parkinson's work on how to put good visuals in proposals. And so I had started kind of digesting everything he had out, and that was probably in the 2008, 2009 timeframe. So I started being a secret stalker of Mike Parkinson. I was a big fan of Ed Tufte and Stephen Few, who talked about how you show data well, and Mike Parkinson was like, how you do that in proposals. And so kind of combined all of my, interests kind of together. And so when I saw that he was involved in APMP, I was like, wow, an organization for proposals. And he's in this, and if I join it, I might get to talk to him. And he's kind of become like I idolized the guy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, maybe I could, stop stalking in secret and start stalking for real. It was kind of scary. I mean, and it's really funny now because, now I've gotten a chance to work with him very closely. He's actually done some consulting for me. That's where I kind of consider myself really lucky that these people that, just have amazing talent. Not only have I gotten to learn from them, but I've truly gotten to collaborate and work with them. And, APMP is just so chock full of these people that just are amazing. And by being involved in the association, you get a chance to learn from them, and then by being really involved in the organization, you actually get to brush shoulders with these people and just even learn more from them. But I got involved because of Mike and my business. I wanted to be a sponsor at that point, and get a little attention from my consulting company. But I didn't really start really attending. This is a terrible story. I wonder if I'll tell it. I was working at a company, and an employee had signed up for Bid and Proposal Con. And throughout my life, I had never been a huge fan of conferences. Personally, when I had gone to conferences, I'd always found them kind of a boondoggle and not really that useful for me. So she had wanted to go to the APMP Bid and Proposal Con, and I approved her attendance. And lo and behold, her work performance wasn't very excellent and ended up being terminated. And so we had a open spot for the Bid and Proposal Con, and there wasn't anyone interested in going. So I said, well, we can't let this go to waste. And so I went myself. And it was in Boston. And from the second I stepped into this conference, I was just amazed at the people and how useful all the education was, and I just felt at home. And I've been going ever since, started presenting at the conferences, stepped up my involvement in the organization, hate myself that I had been a member of APMP for so long without being more involved. And feel very guilty that this one person that had something so unfortunate befall them ended up being such a benefit to me. So
yeah, well,
I
sometimes
guess
that's
I'm a
just how
bad
it
person.
works. No, not not at all. But from that point, it seems like you've started to become like an avid contributor to Bid and Proposal Con, and you're very active in the organization. Do you remember the first presentation you gave?
Yeah, the first presentation I gave was on the topic that I ended up getting my professional certification on, and it was on a lessons learned process that not only I use for lessons learned, but I used to use it for my performance evaluations that I gave to staff, and it's the acronym is KISS, K-I-S-S, Keep, Improve, Start, and Stop. And so that was my first presentation, and it was received well. So I went on to, each of my presentations have been on a different topic. I guess some people specialize in something. I'm kind of a little ADD. So after I give a presentation on something, I get interested in something else and want to talk about the new thing. The one that's been most popular is on agile proposal development methods. I did a lot of consulting at organizations that had adopted agile methods, and that seems to be a very hot topic these days, and I think ultimately a direction that many organizations will adopt. And so that's been a very popular presentation. I've given that now to thousands of people, and I've repeated that presentation dozens of times now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is one of the more popular topics out there, and if you publish anything on agile proposal development, it gets a lot of attention. So people are very curious on how they can leverage those methodologies to have more effective proposal processes.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest there.
Yeah, for sure. You're also a member of the NCA board. Any kind of anecdotes from your experiences, Mid-Atlantic Conference?
Well, I really, my main reason that I wanted to join is I've gotten so much out of this industry, and I truly wanted to find a way to give back. And I had sent a message to the board members, and Helene, who was in the vice president role at the time, contacted me and recruited me, and it was for the logistics position at the time. And my wife laughed and said, "Oh, you're going to plan the events? That'll be funny," because I don't do any of that kind of stuff. She says, I just can't wait to watch that. And so I did that for a while, and then there was a greater need for technology support, and because I have a technology background and I could do web development, I've done that now for like 2.5 years, and so it requires it's not a light lift. That role.
I know.
And I love participating for the Mid-Atlantic Conference. I think we put on a really nice conference. Very disappointed to see that we're not doing that this year. It is a large portion of the work that you generally do on the board. I really encourage those people who are involved in APMP to find some way to get involved. There's just such a big difference between just being a member and getting involved at any level. The difference in who you meet, how you meet them, how you engage with them, the difference it makes in your career long term is just immense. And people gave me that advice all through my career, and it's very, very good advice. You get to, brush shoulders with people at very high levels of the proposal industry, across the nation, and you get to sharpen your skills in unexpected ways. It is one of the smartest things you can do, particularly if you're early in your career. I think it's even more valuable to do then.
Absolutely. And, getting to learn from those organizations, or not organizations, but those individuals, when you're young, and being able to build your skill sets early, and so you just become an even stronger professional as you learn more and experience more. It really is such an invaluable experience that you don't really realize it until you actually kind of take that plunge, right?
Yeah, and the organization always needs help. So the trick is to find out what you're interested in and kind of turn up and say you're eager to help, and you won't be turned down.
Right, absolutely. And then on top of all of, the stuff that you do with APMP and your certifications that you have the professional level, you also have a PMP. Can you tell us a little bit about how that might contribute to your skill sets as a proposal manager? And do you recommend that other proposal professionals achieve PMP?
It's very interesting. Well, I'll answer the question you posed, but the PMP is kind of interesting how I arrived at it. I mean, I do think that it's very helpful because proposals are many projects, and having a basis in project management and all the different disciplines of it is extremely helpful. I ended up with it, being from Carnegie Mellon. That's where that whole where a lot of this stuff came from. And so I was educated in the process. And so I was a very early recipient of the PMP initially. And then as I moved through my career, I got to a point, particularly when I was kind of a CEO, that I was like, I'm really not using this anymore, and I'm going to let it lapse.
Oh, no.
And I let it lapse. And but then I got to another point where I was like, I really want to have this certification. A lot of the positions that I was interested in wanted to see you having it. So I went back to get the certification, and in the, 14 years since I'd originally taken the test had changed drastically. So I went in maybe a little bit egotistical to the test with just very modest studying, and I failed the test the first time, and that was a real kick to my ego. And so I put some study in to do. When I had taken the test the first time, I'd taken a class, one of those preparatory classes to get it way back. And so the second time I just said, I don't need that. I'll do self-study. And so I put, a modest amount of studying to it, and I didn't pass again.
Oh, no.
And so I was like, what's the deal? I've had this certification before.
Yeah.
It was the basis of my, my formal education.
Yeah.
So now I was like, okay, now I was mad. I'm like, so I put a ton of study. I think I did take a short class to prepare, and I think I cleared the bar by a lot when I took it the
final
second time. But I would never let that um, lapse again. Because
Yeah,
I
right.
never am taking that test again. I
Yeah.
think I will have that certification engraved on my tombstone. I've that there's a lot of memorization involved in that certification, and that's not exactly my forte.
Yeah.
Um, but the body of knowledge behind that is very useful, and it's a good background for a proposal manager, I believe. There's lots of pricing and risk and a lot of things that proposal managers use.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I took
Just
like
don't
a
let it lapse once you get it.
right. For sure. I can imagine now that the test has become so different and that hurdle to get over, once you sit it and you pass it, you're never going to want to have to do that again.
No, no.
All right. Well, I think that we're going to have a good transition from that into kind of our more lighthearted Nutters round, which we've named after Howard Nutt.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Neil. So, Neil, let's talk about something that you already shared, Neil, before we actually move into the Nutters round. When most children, they don't even have gardens to play, you had your entire amusement park when you were a
Yeah.
child. How was your childhood? Do you have any interesting memories of spending time as a child at your grandfather's amusement park?
Yeah, I mean, really my strongest memory, well, I have a couple memories from my childhood. My strongest one is the amusement park because that was so exceptional and special. We used to make trips. Well, the trip would involve something really good and something really bad. On the way up to the trip, we used to go through Reading, Pennsylvania, which was where one of the first outlet malls were. And Reading, Pennsylvania, they didn't have sales tax, and they had, as I said, one of the first outlet malls. So we would go in the fall and the spring to get our clothing, and I did not enjoy shopping. And so I would do my shopping in, I don't know, 10 minutes. 4 jeans, 3 shirts, whatever else I needed, done. My sister would take, piles of clothes into the dressing room and never buy anything. It was just awful. So she would be hours. So there's a negative memory of my childhood. But then, after we finished all that, we would go up to Scranton a lot of times and go to the park. And when I was little, I remember just riding all the rides, and I could ride all the rides for free. And it was mainly geared at small children. There were boats and a merry-go-round and bumper cars and a small wooden roller coaster, and there were rides in the back that were nice. And as I got older, I used to work the rides, and that was kind of a special experience, and work in the ticket booth selling tickets, and as I said, play the pinball machines. That was just really great, and it was a special time with my grandfather, who was not really a talker but loved spending time with you. And I was very interested in the entrepreneurial aspects of what it was like to own a business. I always had fantasies of one day taking over that park, but my mother had very different feelings about that park. I'd call them resentful feelings about the park. Growing up with that as a family business, she did not have the same love of the park, and Scranton wasn't really a growing city, and just the economics of small amusement parks, they just don't exist anymore. And so those kind of fantasies were quickly, no, that's not something that's going to happen. But so that's one memory. We used to visit my uncle and aunt in Florida. They lived in Satellite Beach, which is very close to Disney World. So we used to make a lot of trips to that as a kid. So those were very strong memories. when I was a child.
Perfect, Neil, perfect. I think those memories will always be with you forever, I'm sure. Uh, yes. Neil, you also mentioned that you love cruises. Do you have any memorable cruise? What was your first cruise that you ever had? And
I do, and there's two stories if we have time. I do love going on cruises. I wonder if I'll ever go on a cruise again with what's happened to that industry, but I've been on a ton of cruises, and one of them, I went on a cruise for my honeymoon. It was around Tahiti. It was a really nice cruise. We booked a cruise that was way over maybe our class level. It was on a very small ship, and it was one of the first sailings that the line had made, and they really messed up a lot of the arrangements. It was the night before our wedding, and they still hadn't gotten us our plane, our flights, and they'd messed up a lot of stuff. So we had this friend who was really good at assertively getting things that she wanted. So it was a Saturday or Sunday or something like that, and we got her on the phone, and within an hour she got like the vice president of the cruise line on the phone off the golf course. This was really before cell phones were very prevalent, and somehow or another got us our tickets in our hand from FedEx, and FedEx was still pretty new, within like an hour and a half. I don't know how she did it. And so they said that we would be also getting some special things on the cruise. And so we got on the cruise, and there was bathrobe and some champagne and stuff. I said, okay, that's nice. So we also got invited to have dinner on the captain's table every night. And there was like a vice president from National Geographics and all these people who were, you know, you go around the table and people are telling what they do. And my wife was a teacher at that time. And at that point, you know, I'm an IT analyst and we were just totally out of our league. And so we would get these tiny little Pettifor cakes in our room every night, and people were talking about what they liked about the cruise. And I said that we thought that was a really nice touch, getting these little cakes in our room every night at the end of the day. And everyone's looking at us like, what are we talking about? And so we realized that they were also doing that. So I don't know what she did to light the entire organization on fire, but we got a lot of special treatment on that cruise. So not only was Tahiti just an amazing place to visit, but we were treated very, very well on that cruise. And it just goes to show you that sometimes when people make mistakes, it can turn into a good thing. So that was a memorable cruise. And if I can tell one more story, we used to cruise a lot with my uncle and aunt because they liked to go on cruises too. And Holland America was my favorite cruise line, and they had a midnight chocolate buffet. So my uncle was always very careful about how he ate. And so for this chocolate buffet, everyone's going through and has a plate full of all of these desserts. And he goes through and finds this little plate of Jell-O with a little piece of kiwi on top. It looked terrible. And we all come back to our table, and it's right behind this bar near the buffet. And it's on the formal night, so we're all in our tuxedos and everything like that. And it just so happens that the captain's receiving line is right behind us. And we're all eating our desserts. And my uncle goes to eat the kiwi off of the top of his Jell-O. And the room kind of gets silent suddenly, like it does sometimes in big rooms. And my aunt screams out, like knocks the fork out of his hand and says, "You can't eat that." you have diarrhea. And the captain starts laughing. Everyone in the dining room starts laughing. And that was a memorable moment in the cruise. And if you knew these people, the story's doubly funny. So not only did we have those strange kind of events, but we also have seen so many beautiful parts of the world. And I like cruising because you only have to unpack once, and you get to, it's very relaxing, and for me, I can disconnect from work. And until recently, when they've had internet packages, I could literally not be bothered by work. And so that's why I like going on cruises.
Perfect, Neal. Do you suggest any interesting cruise trips? I mean, like journeys or parks that you suggest?
We just recently went through I always get this wrong, the Baltics. I think I got that right. I always get the Baltics and the Balkans mixed up, but the Baltics, we went on a cruise about 2 years ago and really enjoyed that area. Found it really unusual and just beautiful to see the fjords. So that should give you a clue as to whether I got Baltics right. But I'd really recommend that. Alaska is just amazing to see the icebergs in the water and to see them calving from the shore. And if you do a land tour off of the cruise, that I really enjoyed that as well.
Perfect, Neal. So from there, Neal, looks like you also had this passion of collecting Stephen King's first edition books. How did that all begin, and what advice would you give to anybody who's not aware of Stephen King?
Oh, it's interesting. Until very, very recently, I had a huge collection of first edition and rare editions of Stephen King. I just recently sold most of my collection to kind of just, minimize maybe some dust around the house. But I started reading Stephen King when I was a little kid on a trip to England, really. And I, for some reason or another, just really liked his stories. And then when his books came out, I used to buy not just the first editions, but his special editions that had special bindings, and kind of the collectible editions. And I don't know why I liked it, but I just did. I guess it's kind of hard to explain when you like to collect something. But I pretty much had like 3 or 4 bookshelves full of these books of various titles, and I really enjoyed it during the time that I collected. And I hope that whoever has the volumes that I sold, I hope they enjoyed them as much as I enjoyed having them while I did.
Perfect. So let's officially enter the Nutter's round.
I was so sad to hear of his passing. He had such an impact on me, and I considered him such a mentor of mine. So his passing, was something that hit hard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like Ashley and I, we were planning a season 2 starting with Howard in early July, but because Scribble Talk got slightly intense for us, we pushed that to early September. So with that, we lost Howard. With that, our plan of having Howard again as the first guest for a deep dive went down. But but that's it. So we are here, and I'm sure every episode we will recollect his memories here. Neal, thank you for sharing. Let's go. So the first question, if you could time travel, where would you go?
What age would I want to go to? Now that's hard because I don't know that I'd want to go back too far. And this is going to make me sound bad, but I really like air conditioning. I like TiVo. So where would I want to go? I'd like to go not that far. I like the 70s. So maybe that. I'd have to give up TiVo to do that. But maybe the 70s. I'm not going back that far.
Perfect. And would you let us hook up your recent playlist on Spotify to the office speakers? What is in your current playlist in Spotify?
I have a lot of, let's see, who do I have on Spotify? I like a lot of the current music. So on Spotify, I usually just put like today's hits and just let it play. So that's what's on my current list,
Nice. That's got you. What personality trait has gotten you in the most trouble?
Oh, sarcasm. Which is interesting because the Latin root for sarcasm is to rip from the bone, is what that literally means. And I've tried to limit that over the course of my life, but that's a trait I don't like about myself, but I have a sarcastic sense of humor and, sarcasm.
I think we all have the sarcastic angle, Neal. I think sometimes it helps, sometimes it hurts, but don't worry, just be yourself, So if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be and what?
What kind of tree would I be? Willow tree. And I like those weeping willow trees because they kind of branch out and cover things. And so I like to have, I like to kind of branch out and I like to provide coverage for people.
Got you. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horse?
One. The one. I like to focus.
One horse-sized duck. Good luck to you, Neal. Considering you have this experience of knocking down Amris, you can definitely knock down the duck as well. Perfect. So everyone has a good app idea. What's yours?
I had some problems over the years with some pain in my legs and stuff, and as a result, I'm on some medication, and I would love an app that made it easier for me to schedule medication.
Right, that's a good one. So I'm sure your daughters would have believed Santa Claus was real until a certain point. When they realized Santa wasn't real, what did you say to them?
I think they knew that Santa Claus wasn't real around. Well, we're Jewish, so that was kind of touchy with us because we definitely didn't want to spoil it for any other family. So we told them probably around maybe 8 or so. I guess that was about the age, but it was, they were under, strict admonition that they were never to tell anyone else that that was the case and, mess up anyone else's fun. So I think that was about the age, maybe a little younger.
That's good. They listened, and I'm sure they might have kept it to themselves.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What would you do if you find a penguin in your freezer?
If I found a, uh, well, I'd be very shocked because our freezer, my wife loves to shop and plan ahead. So our freezers are always full, almost to the point that when you open them up, something always falls on your foot. I always make sure I have shoes on if I open my freezer. So at first I'd be surprised that he found room. What would I do next? I really like animals, and so I'd be very concerned about the penguin's welfare. So I'd want to make sure he found his way to a nice penguin environment where he could be happy.
That's a nice one. So if you could have a machine that produced $100 every day for the rest of your life, how much would you be willing to pay for it now?
Okay, $100. How much would I be willing to pay for it now? Let's see. $4 million.
Oh, wow, that's pretty accurate. How did you come up with the number, Neal?
Well, because I would be completely satisfied. I've had this conversation with my wife. I would be completely satisfied with $7 million. So if you paid $4 million, that's kind of that'd be pretty reasonable. You'd only have to generate $11 million, and you'd be okay. So you just need to find some way to come up with $4 million, and I think I'd be good enough to come up with investors to raise that. So that's how I came up with that.
That's the scientific answer to a dumb question from me. That's amazing. So, okay, here's the serious stuff. You're on a death row. What would your last meal be?
Chicken parmesan and asparagus.
That's very particular. Why? Is that your favorite food?
Yeah, I really like chicken parmesan and I really like asparagus. I'd probably have a Coke to drink. But I'd be very disappointed that I'd ended up on death row. I'm a pretty moral guy.
That's nice. What is a dream you have never said it out loud to anybody?
I guess two of the dreams that they're not very lofty dreams, but I'd love to write a book, and I would love to be in the position where I could make a significant donation to some organization that is meaningful at some point in my life. Those are kind of two dreams I have.
Perfect. And the book that you're going to write, Neal, assume it's an autobiography. If that's the case, what title would you give your life story?
He showed up.
Oh, that's nice. And one of your hobby is you do watch movies. If you could kind of pick up, say, 5 or 6 movie titles that also kind of loosely aligns to your life principle, what would be some of the movie titles?
Oh, the movies that align to my life principles?
Uh-huh.
That's kind of hard. I'm going to assume that the movies that I really like have something to do with my life, because I really like the movie Groundhog Day, because when I had my business, I thought that that was kind of why I wanted to get out of it. Every day kind of seemed like the same, and a lot of times it feels that way. There's another movie, What About Bob, that I really like, where they talk about baby stepping. They kind of treat it as a joke, but it's actually not that bad of a way to get through life, is just kind of put one foot in front of the other. There's a Woody Allen movie, although Woody Allen isn't that great um, as a person. Some of his movies really are kind of amazing. There's this movie called Crimes and Misdemeanors that I'll watch every time I see it on, and it's about kind of morality and how you kind of put morality, you have to place, there's not abject morality, you put it on things. That's a movie that I can really relate to. I love the movie Catch-22, which led me to the book Catch-22, which I read at least once a year, if not more. And I laugh out loud when I read that book. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but
Definitely, Neil. And the last one in the Nutters round, do you have a nickname?
oh, I do, and it's silly. As a kid, it's Nebel, N-E-B-L. It's the only person who ever called me this was my mother. And I don't know if you remember, like in the 70s or so, they had these tapes that you would punch, because you would turn this little dial and then you could squeeze it and it would press out lettering, and then you could stick these tapes on items. And so she must have been labeling something for camp for me or something. And instead of doing N-E-A-L, she put N-E-B-L. Very hilarious. But she thought it was very funny, N-E-B-L, Nebel, and called me that for a very long period of time. And so that's pretty much the only nickname I've ever had. I find it funny because it's so not funny. And I have a lot of things like that where I just find it funny because it's not funny. But so there's my nickname.
Who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Well, there's a number of people, and I have to start with my immediate family. I have a wonderful wife who's just been an excellent partner through challenges and good times. I have great children. I have wonderful parents that taught me great morals and how to think independently. I'm very influenced by the model of my grandfather, who, as I said, wasn't really a talker, but would spend a lot of time with you. And I had two really great conversations with him near the end of his life that were just treasures when I think back on them. I was influenced a lot by my uncle, Herbie, who was a contracting officer with the government, and I can't help but believe that part of why I was attracted to the career I have were some of the conversations I had with him as a child, and his wife, Maxine, who's been extremely helpful to me at many points in my life. And professionally, there's just so many people, I'd almost be afraid to start mentioning them, but Paul Cohen, who taught me to write proposals, and then I told you how I stalked Mike Parkinson for years, and it led me to APMP. I can single him out. I mentioned Howard Nutt, who just passed away. He had a huge influence on me, and if I list more than that, I'm going to feel bad about leaving people out. But I think one of the most blessed aspects of my life is how many people have influenced me throughout my life, and it's a fantastic burden that I feel that I need to pass on to other people.
That's beautiful, Nate. That's beautiful. If we could ask a reference from your daughters, can you share something about your daddy? What do you think they will tell about you?
I think they would say that that I taught them to think independently and make their own decisions. That was what I would hope they would say, and that's kind of what was a priority in raising them. And when we try to parent them, we realize that you only have a short period of time to influence them. They become their own people. And so we try to give them increasingly large decisions to make, initially small decisions and then bigger and bigger decisions, because, you know, by the time they get to high school and stuff like that, they're making their own decisions. So we gave them increasingly large responsibilities, so that now, as they're launching themselves as adults, they have our sense of morality and make good decisions. And lately they've said that, you know, they feel very competent going out into the world and able to, you know, stand up for what they believe in. And that makes me feel really good.
Nice. So, you know, we are in COVID times, and you already mentioned there are so many people doing kind stuff. But if you could pick one kind or thoughtful thing someone did to you recently, or maybe a few years ago in your whole life, what kind, actful thing that you can share with our listeners?
Well, one kind thing, well, I mean, the thing that comes immediately to mind, and it's a little on the heavy side, but my wife, when my kids were in nursery school and kindergarten, had cancer, very bad cancer that recurred. And it was stage 4, and she was not supposed to survive to see our kids out of elementary school. I mean, the medical chance of her survival was none. And she's now been 12 years cancer-free. And during that period of time, there were dozens of people that did things that helped our family get through that period of time. There was a nursery school, there's a nursery school teacher that did all kinds of things to help my daughter get through. The night we heard of the recurrence of the cancer, it was back to school night, and that daughter very luckily fell off the jungle gyms and broke both of her arms. So we had to run to the hospital with her. It's funny now. It was not at the time. But, you know, she needed a lot of help, and you know, that teacher was just amazing. And so there was a lot of people who reached out during that period of time and made it possible for us to get through that very difficult time. And we had excellent doctors that helped us. And, you know, at this point, you know, everyone talks about Diane being cured, which is, it's just impossible. And so the lesson that I take out of that, and I do a talk about risk, and I don't really bring this into the talk, but a lot of times people talk about, you know, 1% or fraction of a percent chance of things happening. Well, in the case that we're in, there was less than 1% chance survival rate, and we just happened to be that. So it really changes the way you look at risk and reward and that kind of thing. So somebody who's been nice to us, we've had more than our share of that.
What's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
Well, the biggest thing, and I've mentioned it earlier in the session, is that I wish I knew how important joining a professional association and getting active was. It's not that I'm not happy with my career progression, but if I had joined associations earlier, and taken advantage of the networking and professional growth that was available to me earlier, I can only imagine how much better, both in fulfillment and opportunities, that might have been available. And that's something I wish I had known. And I tell anyone that will stand still how important it is to join and get involved. Joining step one, getting involved step two. It's just so critical.
Yeah. So flipping the other side, what's the best piece of advice you received and from whom?
I don't know who it's from, but there's two pieces of advice that I've received. The first one is to show up. And I've heard it from many people. And it's so true that half of achieving is just being there, being present, being in the moment, and doing the best you can do in every opportunity. And I've heard it from countless numbers of people, and there's a lot of truth to it. And then the second thing is well begun is half done. And it's a quote originally from Aristotle, but many people know it better from Mary Poppins. And it's really true that getting started on something is the better half of getting finished with something.
So what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a similar career like yourself?
I would say that working hard is important. Learning everything that you can, that taking every challenge in front of you and not giving up on things, and instead getting excited by those challenges and say, I'm going to get better at every single thing I don't know, and just making a list of things that I don't know and then mastering them. I didn't think I was a good speaker, so I put myself on the radio. I put myself on the newspaper when I wanted to become a better writer. I took presentation classes. I learned from people who I thought were great presenters. I didn't think I knew how to do graphic design, so I followed people who I thought were great at that. And every last thing that I thought that I wasn't good at, I tried to get better and better, just incrementally. And getting incrementally better at something, and then kind of rinse and repeat, gets you quite a ways.
Perfect. And what one trait do you like the most about yourself?
There's a couple things. I think I care about people, and I'm willing to help them. I like that. And I like my analytical nature. Those are the traits that I value most. I think those things.
Perfect. So 30 plus years in the industry, creating your own hobbies now, Neal, back at Siemens as the government director there. What's next for you?
I'm not sure. This is the happiest I've been at a job in my career, and I really like where I've gotten to. So I'm very focused right now on finding people to mentor and give back to the industry. My kids are grown, so I'm a little bit focused on creating some things outside of work, and figuring out what I want to do. Retirement's maybe 15 years away, so what's that, about 600 more proposals to do? So maybe counting them down. I'd love to be traveling again And I think just enjoying life. I told you the story about my wife. During that period of time, we did a lot of traveling. We don't take any time for granted. The disease could come back, should have come back. So we're all on borrowed time, and we have to enjoy the time we have.
Excellent. That's brilliant, Neal. Neal, is there any part of your life or career that we haven't touched that we could spend the last 1 or 2 minutes on, or is there anything else you would like to share about?
No, I think we covered everything that I can think of.
That's brilliant, Neal. Neal, thank you so much for joining Scribble Talk today. It's been an absolute privilege to have you with us here. Wish you, family, colleagues, everybody around you all the good health and happiness. Please continue to inspire bid and proposal industry colleagues and everyone around you. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy. Thank you so much, Neal.
Thank you for having me. I love your podcast, and thank you for providing this service to the industry.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.